Bristol Airport Planning Application, non-technical summary document. Easy to read in the 31-page summary, then to look through the over 508 separate documents that have been put onto the planning portal. Maybe pop into the council offices or into Nailsea Library to read the 18 full A4 folders and extra documents. They made it difficult because the devil is in detail. Just the environment statements and appendices themselves are over 6,000 pages long. So what's written in the technical summary? And what do these statements say? Biodiversity. They mention designated sites, Felton Common Local Nature Reserve, but no mention of their close vicinity on the application form. Surely this should be included. They say no significant effects are predicted. But their surveys show horseshoe bats in common. Bats are protected under the Wildlife and Countryside Act 1981 and the Conservation of Habitats and Species Regulations 2017, as are other residents on the common. Lighting has a hugely negative effect on bats. Felton Common also has skylarks, song thrush, linnet and yellowhammer on the red list birds of conservation concern. Bullfinch, dunnock, willow warbler, white throat, kestrel, green woodpecker and missel thrush on the amber list. Red kite, small-heath butterfly, which is a UK bat species. The grassland itself has significant elements of unimproved grassland, recognised as a priority for conservation in both the UK and the North Somerset Biodiversity Action Plans. And how much dust clouds will cover the common and Goblin Combe during construction? Work due to start in 2029 and will continue to 2038. So how long will there be a dust cloud or likelihood of debris across these areas? 9 years? How can this be no effect? And how about the effect on air quality and odour? No significant effects. Even though there would be 14,000 more air traffic movements per year, averaging 270 flights per day. Therefore more planes, large planes which are higher pollutants than smaller planes, and which also can contain fuel dump systems which allow them to jettison fuel if they have to return to an airport shortly after takeoff. And how about the creation of a new fuel storage unit? How is that negligible? Of course, it helps that their older survey locations are mainly on the airport side, with only one by the church in Felton and none on the main common or in Winford. Noise and vibration. Not significant, not significant, not considered significant. How about the larger Code E type planes flying lower by 12.5 metres? And how about the other planes flying lower? So, Code E have flown previously from Bristol, but none currently flying, unlikely to make up a small amount of flight movements. Does this really warrant an extension to the runway? More worryingly, they don't need to tell anyone if planes are flying 12.5 metres lower, and how many of them there would be, or if they change the fleet and fly more of the Code E aircraft, as that is not development. But Winford Parish Clerk did ask Bristol Airport and received the following response: 23% lower above properties in the edge of Felton Common, 44.5% difference closest to the A38. This is directly above the bridleway that they have said will be safe for horse riders to use. And what about Winford Heights? This is the highest point of Winford Village. And how about night flights? The proposal includes an increase in night flights of 1,000 air traffic movements per year, representing a 25% increase in what they currently have. The Department for Transport has funded a study looking into the effects on sleep. However, this won't be out till later this year. Residents were also included, and therefore this will also cover Bristol Airport. And how about the works themselves? All the purple bars are for work that will be done at night. That includes lights in the common and also the taxiways at the main airport. How is that going to help with sleep? Transport and surface access. No significant effects. Now, this is a real goodie. From issues with accidents in the M5 to just sheer weight of traffic around A38 in the airport, we all know the effect of traffic on our local roads. An increase in passenger numbers can only make this worse. The A38 is a single carriageway and there is no mass transit scheme to help people get to the airport. No train station, no metro, just buses, cars and taxis. No significant effects. This was raised by Bristol Airport in a letter to the Civil Aviation in 2016, 10 years ago. There is now a bus terminus, however, no real improvement over the road network. It is still a single carriageway and no rail, underground or metro or motorway junction. So over 10,000 additional traffic movements a day, just under 4,000 in cars, taxis for the airport. How can this not cause a significant impact? Current traffic movements from North Somerset County daily averages for 2025 show traffic flow daily averages 24,556 at Yanley and at Langford as 17,209. The increase of traffic from 2025 numbers of 10,000 more vehicles is 41.1% at Yanley and 58.6% at Langford on roads that are single carriageway. Significant effects, landscape and visual. They talk about less than 0.2% of Felton Common being affected by the lights. However, the lights would be visible from over 75% of the common, more at night. This would cut part of the common in half. The cables for the lights are to be 90 centimetres underground, and no mention of the disruption during installation and how much of the overall land will need to be dug up for the installation. Not to mention the impact in the local villages and higher lands such as Dundry. Historic environment, these would not be significant. How about the proposed land take of Felton Common? Felton Common, inhabited from Neolithic times, providing common rights since medieval times and being formally projected under the Commons Regulation Act of 1899 and again under the Commons Act of 1965 and 2006. It is very much at the heart of the local community, being a very important recreational public community, used not only by locals but also by people coming from the suburbs of Bristol and all surrounds. It is an important historical, cultural, scientific and nature conservation import and was listed in 2004 as a local nature reserve. Felton Common, at one time nearly half of the land in Britain was common land. However, common land now only accounts for 3% of England. It is completely different from green space as a green belt and is protected by specific laws to ensure that it is guarded against encroachment and held in perpetuity for future generations. Safeguarding their status is vital to recreation, biodiversity, landscape character and archaeology. There is a public right of access to nearly all of it. Commons are the sole significant remaining areas of unenclosed land. This should not be separate to the planning application. This is fundamental to parts of the planning application and is only necessitated by any extension to the runway. Without an extension, Felton Common is not required. Without moving the landing lights, the extension cannot happen. A land take of Felton Common would set a dangerous precedent across the whole of the UK. Deregistration can only be achieved by the owner, and Bristol Airport do not own any part of Felton Common yet. And deregistration is a very lengthy and long legal process with heavy scrutiny, not just decided by the Secretary of State. Major accidents and disasters. No negative significant effects are expected. Type code E aircraft to fuel dumps. They are unable to land with as much fuel as they take off with, and therefore are allowed to jettison fuel. Therefore, if there was a problem after takeoff, they would have to release fuel before landing. No current aircraft flying from Bristol Airport have fuel dumps. The public safety zone would have to move. This would include the restricted zone, encompassing 113 metres of the A38, which can be at a standstill, up from 25 metres and would cover an area in Felton Common itself. Aborted landings. For 2025 alone, Bristol Airport have had 178 aborted landings. On Saturday the 16th May, this was due to another plane on the runway. These do have to be reported to the CAA, however cannot be provided to either members of the public or press via a Freedom of Information request. Social economics. Bristol Airport is owned by 4 companies, none of these being British. Macquarie Asset Management, New South Wales Treasury Corporation, Australian Retirement Trust and Stepstone. So what does this mean to our local economy? Profit extraction rather than local reinvestment. Reduced local accountability. Weak alignment with UK climate and environmental duties. Limited democratic influence over expansion. Increased pressure for continual expansion. Reduced transparency. Misalignment between local impacts and global benefits. And weak incentives for long-term community migration. Based on the Civil Air Authority passenger survey from 2019 pre-COVID, Bristol Airport have not been surveyed again until 2025, the results of which are not out yet. There is a predominance of leisure with only 13.8% for business travel, both domestic and international, therefore money going out of the economy, not coming in. With regards to transport mode, only 21.8% is public transport, 78.1% was private transport. In their annual monitoring report for 2025, Bristol Airport have provided a public transport mode share for 19.8%, down from 2019. Population and human health, no significant effects. What about dust clouds during construction, the build lasting 9 years, work being done overnight, the loss of important green space and common land, the increase in flights, the increase in night flights, the increase in pollution, both air and traffic, the increase in traffic around the area, lower planes, greater noise, changes in quality and air quality. This list could go on and on. These are figures from the Civil Aviation Authority themselves from a report in December 2025 and speak for themselves. Emissions outpacing air traffic growth, 10 busiest airports generating 95% of all emissions, including Bristol. Long-haul flights generating more emissions than short-haul. They want to do long-haul flights with larger planes to generate more emissions than short-haul flights. Bristol may be talking about 1,000 of these flights, and this being 1% of total flights. However, this would still contribute 5.73% of an increase in overall pollution, increasing exponentially if more long-haul flights were to be run. How about other things? Parking and highway safety. 31% increase in parking spaces from what they have now. This includes new multi-storey parking erected in 2025. 37% of their revenue in 2024 was from car park revenue, with concessions of 63%. Next accounts will probably come out in October 26. The revenue from 2024 does not include the new car park built in 2025, nor the increase in pick-up and drop-off. Within the same letter to the CAA earlier, they themselves say that in order to grow, they rely on over 60% of their income coming from elsewhere than aeronautical revenue. There are no stats for 2025 yet. However, this is the Department for Transport data from 2020 to 2024 for collisions, casualties and vehicles. This data is in relation to collisions within 5 kilometres of the airport. 65% of collisions were by people who were more than 10 kilometres from their home. 45% of the vehicles were from over 10 kilometres from their home address. And 53% of casualties were from over 10 kilometres from their home address. These are not local people. National policy is to do more with existing runways. Emphasis on the existing, no mention of extension of existing runways. This is quoted numerous times by Bristol Airport across their documentation. However, again, I reiterate, existing runways, the wording used, not extension of runways, with emphasis on passenger and air traffic movement. In 2020, North Somerset refused expansion to 12 million passengers by Bristol Airport due to local impact. All the arguments at the time still ring true. Lack of highway infrastructure against climate control, noise, sleep disturbance, air quality, etc. The Bristol Airport forecasts were also called into question. Now, by looking to step up to 15 million passengers and adding an extra 3 million passengers, these should also be readdressed. The forecast did not take into account the expansion of Cardiff Airport. Bristol Airport themselves estimate that 20% of their passengers come from Wales. Cardiff Airport is owned by the Welsh Government and were taken to court by Bristol Airport earlier this year due to subsidies being made for the growth of Cardiff Airport and additional routes, including long haul. Both Bristol Airport and Cardiff Airport have the same demographic, much of the same catchment area. However, the Bristol Airport forecast run in February 2026 did not account for this. Legislation and statutory duties required to be met by Bristol Airport expansion. This covers a huge area: climate and carbon law, planning and environment law, nature protection and biodiversity, air quality and human environment, equality, fairness and human rights, public participation and access to justice. So what can you do? Make sure you lodge an objection. Get at least 10 other people you know to lodge an objection, and for them to ask another 10. Bristol Airport is big enough. You don't have to live in North Somerset to enter comments. Material considerations in relation to planning. These are the items to highlight: traffic and noise, inadequate public transport provision, parking and highway safety, effect in nearby conservation areas, air and water pollution, light pollution, impact in greenbelt, public safety, against national policy and local policy. Thank you.